Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Matthew McKinney. I'm an ornithologist and conservation biologist here at West Liberty. Um, some of my research includes a current research project I'm wrapping up on the eastern screech owl in West Virginia, a project I'm just beginning on American kestrels here in West Virginia, and also some research I'm doing on uh, passerine bird species. So I've got several different projects I'm currently working on. I live here in West Liberty with my wife and our 7 rescue cats, and yeah, it's a little bit about who I am. Um, what I want to do in this video today is go over sort of what you need to do to succeed in this class and how this class actually works, how this class functions. And hopefully this does not take too long, but I want to try to set you up at the beginning for success. So because there are quite a few moving parts to this class. The first thing here is obviously you need to get into Canvas and go into the modules section. Don't worry about going to the home page and clicking around in there. You can, you just don't need to. Go to the modules. Everything you need is in the modules. The homepage stuff can actually be a little bit confusing. For example, if you go into the homepage and then click on the syllabus button there, it's going to take you to a page that is not formatted correctly. It's not going to make a lot of sense to you. The syllabus is provided at the beginning of the Start Here module as a PDF. And so that's where we'll start. Let's take a look at the syllabus first, and then we'll look at some of these other things. Okay, so this is Grad Zoo Ornithology, Spring 2026, Section 1. Um, I am Dr. Matthew McKinney, and that's my email address. It is matthew.mckinney@westliberty.edu. For the purposes of this class, that is how I would prefer to be contacted. You may contact me at this phone number. This is my office number. The chances of me physically being present to answer a phone call in my office are pretty small because most of the time, if I'm not in my office, I am in a meeting or I am involved in some form of research work. So there's just not, there's not a lot of time that I'm actually just sitting in here to take phone calls. So email is best. You can contact me through the Canvas interface as well. I am guaranteeing you that I will be slower to respond to the Canvas interface than an email, but I will respond to that as well. Office hours are BAO, meaning by appointment only. Um, if you want to have a one-on-one conversation with me about maybe a challenge you're having in class or a question that can't be handled just through a brief email, we can do that. What that will look like is you have to email me, request this meeting, and then we'll schedule it, and I'll be happy to meet with you to help you with any of your problems. You can read the course catalog description and these course objectives, but what it says is we're going to learn about birds. We're going to learn about birds in terms of their general biology. We're going to learn about birds in terms of their conservation needs. We're going to have by the end of the class, hopefully a global perspective on avian diversity and be able to recognize birds kept in zoos. We're going to understand birds in an evolutionary context. And yeah, that's what the class is about. Required text. Okay, I have here a giant pile of books. You have one book that is required for this course. It is the third edition of this book, the Cornell Handbook of Bird Biology. This is by Lovett and Fitzpatrick. So you will need to order that book. I would just get it on Amazon, get a used copy. It'll be fine. You don't need a fancy new copy to perform well in the class. So that's the required text. The material draws from several other sources as well. There are some online sources. In particular, an important online source is the Birds of the World, which is a site hosted by Cornell that you have to pay yearly subscription to get access to. So some of the material comes from that site. It's particularly when it comes to some of the natural history type stuff that we're going to cover in when we talk about the different species tags. You may not know what that means yet, but it's an important source nonetheless. I also will pull from occasionally Frank Gill's classic text Ornithology, not very much, but a little bit, and the Manual of Ornithology, particularly when we get to uh, the sections on anatomy and physiology. The Manual of Ornithology is the primary text for those sections, and in that part, the Cornell book kind of takes a more of a backseat. It's still important in that part, but not as important as some of the things I'll talk about in the manual. And I'm sorry, that's Proctor and who's the other author in that? Lynch, Proctor and Lynch. Okay, so those are the texts, and there are some other sources as well, but those are all the major texts. Do not go out and buy all those books. It would be completely unnecessary. If you're a bird fanatic, if you are intending to study birds in any capacity for the rest of your life, like that's you want to be an ornithologist or you want to be a zookeeper that works very explicitly with birds, those are some great texts to learn more about birds, but otherwise you don't need all those books. Okay. Attendance. So attendance is kind of a weird thing to even talk about in an asynchronous online class, but just very briefly, um, you probably will be logging in about 3 times a week. That's just estimated based on the amount of time it takes to do the stuff. If you're not logging in 3 times a week, you're probably logging in once a week or twice a week for a much longer period of time. This class has a substantial workload, and yeah, you'll need to either set aside one really large brick of time or several smaller bricks of time to get the workload completed. Um, so yeah, that's the attendance. Obviously, if there's I don't take attendance. That wouldn't make any sense in this kind of class. If there is something wrong, say you have a week where you have some really bad thing happen, let's hope that doesn't happen. But something happens in your life where you're like, I have to be gone for a week. Just let me know. That's all it takes, and I will extend the due dates for you, and we'll work it out. If you don't let me know, I will not extend the due dates for you, and you will get zeros for all the things in that week. So just talk to me. That's basically what it comes down to. If you are a research student, so we have a number of students in this class that are not doing MAs, they're doing MSs, and they need to do thesis work. If you have to do thesis work and you need to miss a week because you're out in the field doing research, all you have to do is communicate that to me, and I will adjust due dates to fit with your research schedule. Your research comes first. Okay, grading and assessment. It's all pretty straightforward. Every week there will be a discussion post. That discussion post is worth 12 points. Every week there will be a writing. I'm going to talk about all these things in more detail in a little bit. The writings are worth 28 points each. That means there are 40 points every week. That's a ton of points. I can't even express how many points that is. There are 40 points every week that are to be achieved through writing and discussion. It's astronomical. I will grade the species focus writings quite rigidly. Um, I expect significant effort on those writings. They're short, but I expect them to be well researched. Again, let's come back to that in a little bit. There are 2 regular exams, if you want to call them that, worth 100 points each. Those points are a little tentative. They might be slightly over 100 points, but that's a close ballpark. And then there's a final exam, and that final exam is worth 200 points. So it's a substantial amount of points. The final exam is cumulative in this course, which means all things in the course are fair game on the final exam. Due dates. So forum posts, and if there's any question about these due dates, this is the document to look at. Anything else you see that has a different date is wrong. Just tell you that up front, because I think there was a place in the course overview where it says something different. This is the date. Forum posts are due every Thursday by 11:59 p.m. Modules open in about 8 a.m. in the morning on Mondays, give or take a couple hours. Um, so yeah, modules for each week open on Monday. Discussion posts are due by Thursday, and then your 2 responses for those discussions are due by Sunday night, just in time for the next module to open. Obviously, you can do them before that. The species focus writings are due Sunday by midnight. Well, by 11:59 p.m. If you submit an assignment late, I will not give you points for it. I will just give you a 0, because once I get the assignments, I'm grading them, and that's it. So don't submit late. The only exception to that is, again, in extenuating circumstances, or in the case of something like thesis research. In all of those cases, the only thing you need to do is communicate the problem to me, or communicate, the conflict of schedule to me, and I will adjust your due date accordingly. All I ask is your communication. If you tell me a week after the fact, it's too late. I need to know when it's happening. The schedule. So our schedule is extremely easy to follow. Every week there is one module. Module 1 is week 1, module 2 is week 2, etc. That's the whole semester. And then about every sixth week approximately, there is an exam along with a module. So just to be clear about this, modules 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 are the content that make up exam 1. Module 6 is not on exam 1. You do not get you don't get thrown into the sort of deep end where you learn module 6 and immediately take an exam that includes that information. You have time to study that information. So only in this case, the first 5 modules are on exam 1, and then 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 are on exam 2. And then we get to 12, 13, 14, and 15 build up to the final exam. Now the final exam is cumulative, meaning that 12, 13, 14, 15 are in addition to everything that came previously. All of the content is on the final exam to some extent. That's why it's worth 200 points. It's a pretty big exam. These dates are tentative. For example, I am mulling around moving exam 2 back 1 week so that there is 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 are the only, so you don't have the module 11 content on exam 2. If I make that decision, I will let it be known through an announcement. But right now, this is where they're sitting. The final exam will definitely not move. It will be there. Okay. AI. So in general, you may not use AI, but let me explain a couple caveats to that. Um, if you use AI and you turn it in, I put it through, your submissions in writing are turned in through the Turnitin system. It will flag AI. It'll let me know. If it's heavily AI-driven writing, I will give you a 0. End of story. But there are exceptions, not in the writing, but in the use of AI. AI can be a valuable tool. As much as I do not like it, I am willing to admit that it can be a valuable tool for doing things like helping you generate an idea, or creating an outline of of a paper that you might use to then structure your writing from. You can do that. If you want to say, hey, AI thing, ChatGPT or whatever AI you're using, create this outline as a general skeleton for me to write from. I don't know how you would engineer that prompt. That's really not my realm of expertise. But if you wanted to do that, you could do that. But the final writing must be your writing. It cannot be ChatGPT's writing or any other sort of writing assisted, computer assisted writing. Again, AI is tantamount, and AI writing is tantamount to plagiarism. It's even if you cite the AI. You guys can read this stuff. I'm not going to read this all to you. We're ADA compliant here. We are Title IX compliant here. Typically, Title IX doesn't. Very rarely would it come up in an online class. I guess it could. If you have questions about this, just reach out to me. I can explain it in more detail. And any specific academic policies we have are in the student handbook. So that's the syllabus. Let's take a look at the class structure real quick. You'll see this recorded video on this page right up here with the syllabus once this video is done being recorded. Here you have the home page. So if I click on this, it's going to take you to a page with a red-tailed hawk looking back at you. It has some general course information. You don't really need anything on this page. I just gave you all the information in the syllabus. If you click on this button, it will not give you the PDF syllabus. It's going to take you to this page. This page does not show you anything. It is essentially useless. Just don't even go there. So leave this page alone. Modules. So let's go back to modules. This is the page you need to be on, the modules page. There's the syllabus, right? There's the home page. It's not particularly useful. Course overview, if you click on this, it has some additional policy information. Probably the most important thing for you to read is this submitting assignments and grading, because it's telling you about some of the behaviors of Canvas. Basically, the Canvas text editor, when you go to submit assignments through it, times out after about an hour. And when it times out, if you haven't submitted, it will just eat everything that you wrote. The workaround for this is pretty straightforward. Write all of your stuff in a Word doc or a Google Doc or whatever you want, and then paste it into the text editor and submit right away. That fixes that. And of course, always save a copy of that work in case it gets lost. So that's the course overview. You already have my information, but it's also here as well. And then there is a discussion forum on here that you can use to introduce yourself. I would like you all to go on there and just post a little introduction, but you don't have to. I would leave that up to you. There's no grade or requirements for this. This is more of a if you want to introduce yourself kind of thing. All right, so let's take a look at the first module, because that's the module you're going to have to worry about starting next Monday. This module is the value of avian diversity, or more so the way that the chapter structures it, why study birds, and the Palaegnathus birds. And you'll see here there's an overview and module outcomes. This is a very sort of generic thing. It's just like you're going to do these things. By the end of the module, this is what you accomplish. You can look at that if you want to. It's not necessary. It does have the things you're going to do, but all of those things are right here in front of you on this module. So module 1 lecture, if you click on that, you will see there are 2 lectures. Most weeks there will be 2 lectures. This week you're lucky, they're shorter lectures. There's only about an hour, a little over an hour total of lecture. Most weeks there will be quite a bit more than that. This mostly because the first chapter of the book is very, very short, and there really aren't that many ratites and tinamous, paleognathous birds to talk about in the taxonomic advisory group. Let's talk about that real quick. What the heck is a taxonomic advisory group? Well, I have this up right here. This is avianscientific.org, the Avian Scientific Advisory Group, or ASAG. And so tags are groups with content experts from different zoos that manage these birds in a zoo setting. And they break these down, often by order, though it's not entirely correctly by order. There's some problems with the taxonomy of these tags. But here, these are all the tags. You will want to use these resources when you're writing your species focus writings every week. These are good resources to go in and learn a little bit about your species. So for example, I have up right now the Struthionoformes Taxon Advisory Group. These are the paleognathous birds that we're talking about in Module 1. And you can see, so let's just click on that's brown kiwi. That's fine. Here's brown kiwi, and this is a profile of natural history information and captive care information on this species. You have things like temperature tolerance, which is obviously a really important thing if you're keeping them in captive care. You have their information about their diet, life expectancy, etc. All this stuff. Can you keep them in a mixed species exhibit? What's their social structure? All this stuff. And these additional comments and management challenges are some of the most important things that you might look at on these pages. This is a great starting point, and you can cite these for your weekly writings. So that when I say tag, if I say we're looking at the tag species, I mean the species in the specific tag that's AZA manages. Now, let's briefly talk about the tags and taxonomy. There are some problems here that you should know. Struthionoformes. It is true that there was a time that all of these species were grouped into Struthionoformes. Today, the only one of these species that is in Struthionoformes is the ostrich. That's the only, within the modern taxonomic framework of birds, that is the only one that you see here that's in that order. The rest of these are in different orders, like rheas are in Rheaformes, for example. And our brown kiwi, Pterigiformes. So all of these are in different orders. This taxonomy doesn't reflect that. The taxonomy that you have to know is the taxonomy in the PowerPoint, not the AZA's very outdated taxonomy. Okay, so we are using Clement's taxonomy, which is a much more up-to-date perspective on the relationships of these things. Nonetheless, when we study these groups, I will cover them by what tag they are in. Meaning, when this week, for example, when we do the Struthionoformes tag lecture, it will be all of these species. It's not just going to be ostrich. It will be everything in this tag group. And I just tell you what orders and families all the different species are in. Some of them they have weird names like CP and P because they're covering several different groups at once, several different orders. Geckos, same thing. I like the raptors one because it just says raptors. Just understand that the taxonomy that we're talking about in class does not always jive with AZA's taxonomy, and it certainly doesn't jive with the order that they have these things in. These things are quite out of order if you were talking about relative taxonomic relatedness. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about that because I could sit here and talk about that for half an hour. It's a little bit of a pet peeve of mine. I wish AZA would update their stuff. Okay, let's go back to modules. So you do the lecture. I don't think I even have anything, and I do not have anything. I was going to say the summary. I will put something in there. It's going to say you learned these things. That's what it's going to say. Um, this is the next thing that matters, the discussion. So then you do the discussion. You read or you listen to the lectures, take notes, do the discussion post. So you can go and you click on it, and it's going to have a discussion post. You reply to the discussion post. Once you reply, you can see everyone else that's replied to the discussion post, and then you can respond to those people, which is a requirement. You have to respond to 2 people per week. And then can I show you this here? Yeah. This has a rubric associated with it. You should be able to view this rubric as well, and it tells you how you get your points for your discussion. So this is this week's discussion, and you have to do that. Now, every discussion, or many of the discussions, will have a paper to read associated with them. Some of them might even have 2 papers to read. But you have to read this paper, and that's going to be a part of your discussion in some manner. And then the last thing is going to be the species focus. The species focus is is a writing that you have to do. So this is the species focus. It's a 1.5 to 3 page APA or MLA cited paper. Prefer APA, but I don't care that much as long as you do it correctly. That's really what it comes down to. And I've given you 3 different approaches to writing these. So what you will do every week is you'll have your list of species within the tag. So this week you've got the approximately 9 species, 9 or 10 species of the Struthioniformes tag. And so you're going to go, I would like to learn more about one of those species. I think that brown kiwi are so cool. I want to learn about the North Island brown kiwi. That's the species in the tag. And so you pick that species, and then you write a 1.5 to 3 page paper on that species, and you can do it from a perspective that you personally find interesting and valuable. And there are 3 angles you can take. The first is captive care. If you work in a zoo, want to work in a zoo, want to move within a zoo from some other taxa to birds, whatever, you might want to do a captive care based writing, in which case you will write about the captive care of these animals. That can be your focus. A great place to start for that, of course, is the ASAG website that I showed you a couple minutes ago. The next thing that you might want to look at is sorry, I lost my train of thought there. Wow. The next thing you can do, or next option you have, is the ability to write in terms of conservation. So you can write, if you want to write about, say, major issues and studies surrounding the conservation of a species, or recovery efforts and their relative successes and failures in that regard, you can write about that. Really, what I care about is that you are personally interested and invested in it. That's why you get to pick the species and the focal topic. Finally, you can do a sort of more, I'd say, generic deep dive into the natural history of the species, outlining things like the breeding biology, feeding ecology, and niche space of the species. All of those are options, okay? Whichever you prefer. So that's the species focus assignment. You do one of those every week. It's 28 points. And there's a rubric for that as well. Here you can see that rubric. It's right here. So this is how you'll be graded on that. And you should be able to see that as well. So that's it. I think that is a pretty good overview to get you started on this course. Um, Again, every week, just do the module and you'll be good to go. If you have any questions about any of this stuff, or you're having trouble with Canvas stuff, I have trouble with Canvas all the time. Um, Feel free to reach out to me, and I'll do everything I can to help you get your situation sorted out. Thank you.